All right, good evening. Oh, we got to try that again. Good evening. Oh, no, much better, much better. I'm Professor Anthony Brown, and on behalf of my colleagues in the departments of German, Women and Gender Studies, and Africana, Puerto Rican, and Latino Studies, my home department, I welcome you to tonight's program. We are so pleased to have and welcome back Yana to Hunter College to show her film and engage with members of the Hunter community. Uh, but before I do that and talk more about Yana, I need to take a moment to acknowledge those who have been so generous in their support of this historic program. One is certainly Hunter President Jennifer Rabb, Dean Andrew Polsky, Dean John Rose, the Max Cade Foundation, Harold Holzer, who is the director of Roosevelt House, Peter Scofani, you've seen running around here, so helpful to us in making sure the logistics and other important details were taken care of. And last but not least, I really have to give a big shout out to Professor Elka Nikolai. This is her vision. She's very modest, as some of you know, but this is her vision. And through numerous emails, phone calls, etc., she helped to make this vision come to fruition. So I really want to thank her and all of those who have supported this program. Yes, she will moderate the discussion after I speak briefly about our guests. All right, so I want to turn now to a more formal introduction to Yana Paragas. Yana is a journalist and television moderator who proudly identifies as Afro-German. Yana studied political science and Africana studies in her hometown of Hamburg, as well as New York City, our own very Hunter College, and also in Berlin. Yana began her television career as an assistant to the editor-in-chief of N24 in Berlin. Before that, she worked for the UN, particularly the Department of Peace Operations, the Reuters News Organization, and various newspapers and foundations. In 2016, she produced the documentary Afro Deutschland, Afro-Germany being black and German, which deals with racism against black people in Germany. And you'll get a chance to see a portion of that this evening. This is a subject that Yana remains very passionate about, and certainly, again, I really credit her for bringing these issues to the fore on a global stage. Since 2021, she has been the anchor of the daily newscasts on German public television and has the distinction of being the first black journalist with a continued presence on German television. That's a big deal. Yana has often mentioned in her interviews the importance of two towering African American intellectuals in her development. One is James Baldwin, the celebrated writer. And some of you may know that in 2019, she wrote the foreword to the German edition of Baldwin's classic text, The Fire Next Time. In addition, she talks about Audre Lorde, who many of you know taught at Hunter College for many years. And Yana credits her work, Audre Lorde's work, as being crucial in the development of the Afro-German movement in that country. Parenthetically, I might add that next Tuesday, if you are around, Hunter College will rename 68th between Park and Lexington after Audre Lorde. So again, the role of Hunter women pioneering and making important contributions. Yeah. I can certainly talk much more about Yana's accomplishments, but I know you want to hear from her personally. But I want to conclude on a personal note. Yana took my class back in 2005, I believe, and African American politics and social change. I have several of my students here, and she also did response papers, media analysis, the same things that you guys are doing. And as you teach for a while at an institution, you run across students who have an impact immediately on you. And I certainly put Yana in that category. Her brilliance, her commitment to social justice, were on display immediately. And so you kind of take a step back and say, who is this person? And she certainly fit the bill in terms of her preparation, the constancy of raising critical questions about the material. And Yana challenged me as well as her classmates. She was not shy about doing so, and I really appreciated that. So it created a very dynamic and very memorable classroom experience. And I saw her earlier, and I didn't want to share this anecdote, but I remember vividly I had a reading on the syllabus, and she said, Professor Brown, why is this reading here? This does not add anything to the class, and I was like, oh my goodness. But I read it again, and I was like, wow, Yana, you really, I didn't tell her this at the moment, but I told her, hey, so I've never used that reading again. So this is a testament, to her critique. So, suffice to say, Yana has continued to have a deep commitment to racial justice. So in closing, I am so proud of so much that she has accomplished and how she's used her Hunter education, right, on a global level to raise issues of racial justice. And that's really a testament to our institution and the kind of students and leaders that we produce across the world. So let's give a warm, warm Hunter welcome to Yana. Thank you.
Well, thank you so much for being here. I'm really moved, actually, to be here because I really, really appreciated my time at Hunter College. It's 17 years ago, a long time ago. But I know I was so desperate to learn more about the African diaspora and learn more about racism and how the world works and the African American history and politics. And I did all my credits here in my minor Africana studies because it was really hard to find those classes in Germany, right? At the University of Hamburg, we hardly had any, first of all, black teachers, then, classes that focused on racism. It has changed a little bit, but it was really difficult then. So for me, it was very important to be here. And I was just, taking like suitcases of books back to Germany, because if you go to a bookstore in Germany, you don't find black literature. Like, you find some, but it's not, you have to kind of look for it, and it's getting better, and now they're translating James Baldwin, but it's not as obvious as it is here. We can just go to Harlem or wherever and just find, rows and rows of all these books from all these brilliant thinkers and poets and writers. So I really, really enjoyed it. And I don't remember that anecdote, but I'm sure it happened. But I just really appreciated professors like Professor Brown. So I think, my time here really had an influence on me doing this documentary. And like Professor Brown said, I did it in 2016 and it came out in 2017. So it was before the Black Lives Matter movement. But you will see, and I will be happy to discuss with you, the issues afterwards, that it's still very relevant because Black Lives Matter has changed a lot in Germany when it comes to the discourse, when it comes to, like being able to talk openly about structural racism, but nothing has changed fundamentally yet, right? So we still confronted with a lot of these issues that, has been going on for a long, long time. So this documentary basically is a very personal documentary. Like, I tell personal stories of racism, of empowerment. I didn't only want it to be about racism, I also wanted it to be about empowerment. What can we do? What can each person do to kind of deal with racism and change it and challenge it? And so I talked to other black people in Germany about their experiences, and these are all people I either knew personally before, or they represent issues that were important to me. So you will see that. And it's interesting because just today a new study came out in Germany. It's the first National Monitor on Racism in Germany. And they had all these figures saying that 90% of people in Germany are aware that there's racism. but still half of the people in Germany think that human races exist. But we all know it's a social construct, right? So it's just used to exploit people, divide them, whatever. We can talk about it later on. But it's really interesting because you feel like it's 2022 and still so many people don't see it as a social construct. And it tells you how much we still have to, create awareness and talk about it and make sure that we not only address racism as an individual issue, but a structural, institutional one. So I was moved when I heard a few days ago that the street will be renamed Audre Lorde Way, because like Professor Brown already mentioned, Audre Lorde had a crucial role in the Afro-German movement. It actually was very crucial in coining the term Afro-German. So it will also play a role in the documentary, and we can talk about it later on. But I think we have been heavily influenced as Afro-Germans by what is going on here in the United States with the African-American liberation movement. So thank you so much for coming, and I'm really looking forward to all the questions and comments afterwards. Thank you.
Thank you so much for making this film. It was very eye-opening in many respects. Before I start, actually, I just put down a note. This man from Burkina Faso who fled Burkina Faso to Germany, he had to confront the court now a third time, I think, or the second time when you were there, and the attacker, you said, would still try to appeal the conviction. Do you know what happened to him?
As far as I know, he was convicted for the 10 months. Yeah, he had a long record. I mean, he was a neo-Nazi, basically.
Yeah. Okay. So you had worked as a moderator on TV shows before you decided to go into filmmaking and direct Afro Germany. Can you talk a bit about why you made the film? I mean, did you wake up one morning and decided to make this film?
No, but I kind of always wanted to do a documentary on Black people in Germany. And, it's just one of the things you put on the side and you're like, let's hope it will happen one day. And then one day it happened. Deutsche Welle, who I worked for before, now I'm at ZDF, but I was at Deutsche Welle before, they just asked me, you want to do a documentary on Black people in Germany? I was like, what? This is heaven sent. Yes. So, yeah, this is how it came about. And it's very personal to me.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. And you are one of the directors and also in front of, I'm sorry, I still have to negotiate this here. You're one of the directors and also in front of the camera. Yeah. Leading the interviews. So how did you negotiate these two roles?
It was kind of difficult, but for me it was very important, I think, to have control about the documentary, like have control which passages I will use, how I want it to be filmed and stuff like that. Because I think, as a Black person, talking about racism is hard, right? Because we often experience this reaction where people say you're too sensitive, they don't take you seriously, it might affect you at work because, I don't know, your employers might not think that you're right or whatever. So for me, I didn't want, first of all, I wanted to have, most of the people worked on the film were Black as well. So I tried to make sure, from their makeup artist to whatever, one of my co-directors was Black as well, and the person who was the editor, he was a person of color. So I wanted to make sure there's as many people of color and Black people involved as possible, and make sure it's a safe space, as if, and I just wanted to have control because, you open yourself up. And I also wanted to make sure that the people I interviewed can trust me. And they know that I will be very responsible with the things they tell me because they open up as well, especially Indira, when she talked about her family story. She didn't do that before publicly, right? She's not a public figure or anything. So that's why it was very important for me. So I kind of always switch, look at the camera, okay, and then do the interview and stuff like that. But it was fun. It was hard, but it was fun.
Before I forget, there are index cards on your seats, and if you have, a question, please get this question to us. And the same holds
There's already
true
a question
for once and great. Professor Brown will collect those cards, and then we could go forward with those as well. Professor Brown is the one, but it's okay. And the same holds true for the Zoom chat, because we can also, there is also the possibility to view this program on Zoom. I will wait a little, more. I mean, also you can just raise your hand and ask, right? I mean, that's also a possibility. There, don't see a hand. I go on. So the film. Oh, I'm sorry. Please go ahead. Yes. Sure.
Afro-Ghanaian?
Yes.
Okay, I think I met him when I was in Berlin, and he was doing a tour of Afro-German in Berlin. Is he still doing that?
Yes.
Oh,
Yes.
okay.
I'm sure it was him.
Okay.
He's fantastic.
Okay.
I would
And-
tell him about it.
And a second question, when I was there, we went to a play that was in blackface, and the director of the play was East German originally, and he was, when I asked him a question about, did he think it was funny about doing the play in blackface, he said he's communist, so he's not racist. Do a lot of people from East Germany still have that feeling that they're not racist because they're communists? And a third question, do you know about the African Diaspora Film Festival?
Third question, no. Is it in New York? Okay, great. I will look it up. Thank you. Second question. Yeah, I mean, this is interesting, right? And that's what Indira told us about in the film as well. Like in the GDR, they felt they put up an anti-fascist wall, right? Like the Berlin Wall. So it's kind of like, oh, there are no fascists and no racism in the GDR. But we all know, of course, racism is everywhere. It's also there. And they had like the policy was we support international solidarity. They had students from African countries, like from other socialist countries coming to the GDR to study, but they weren't really allowed to mix with the population, right? So they were kept in like separate quarters. So it was basically just like, a facade to say, we practice international solidarity. In reality, they kept apart. So today, like the racism, I mean, there's everywhere in Germany is racism, but like if you look at how people vote, more people in the East vote for right-wing parties than in the West. So it's interesting in the East, meaning like the former, GDR, right? And I mean, the wall came down in 1989, so it's been quite a while. So I think, because they kind of swept over the issue. And I'm not saying that the West, they were great with dealing with racism, right? But they kind of felt like, no, we can't be racist because, it's not like what socialism is all about. You didn't really talk about it. So, yeah, it didn't really come to the forefront. You didn't really give Black people or people of color a space to, tell their stories. I think this is one of the biggest problem, really, right now. So, yeah. Yeah. Thank you.
Thank you for making this documentary and speaking, because being biracial myself and being adopted, I really identified with it. And at the same time, my question is, being a woman in the position as you are, and you're at the top front now, and you're making these documentaries with, obviously you have a lot of Caucasian people around you. Have you had to create boundaries with certain people that don't have sensitivity towards these issues as they come out? Or have you, on the opposite side, sorry, I'm nervous. No. On the opposite side, found people saying, wow, I never thought like this before. Thank you for opening my eyes to this way, and kind of changed the construct of their thinking?
Good question. Well, I like to engage with people, like talking about the issues that are raised in the documentary, right? So I like to have formats like this, and I do it like go to schools in Germany, and because I think it's a great way of kind of, first of all, for other people who experience racism, it's like a way of exchanging
experiences and how you also, like how do you deal with it? For me, it's really important to talk with other people of color, Black people, about my racist experiences because we all know it's really draining and it's really hurtful and it's really difficult to raise the issues at work, I guess, when it happens at work. So because all of a sudden then you're too sensitive and you're too emotional and stuff like that. So that is really hard. So for me, it's always very important to have people around me in my, personally, so I can feel safe with. I think, what? I always feel it's kind of like a day-to-day decision how much you want to talk with people who don't experience racism, to talk with how much you want to talk with them about racism. Like sometimes I feel like sharing, if people are really open-minded, and especially when it comes, for example, to language. That's a big issue in Germany, like which terms do you use and why, and why do we want to be called Afro-German and not farbig, for example, it's like colored and stuff like that. And I feel it's good if people are just open. And I'm always willing to talk with people about it when I feel like they're responding to it. They just listen and maybe think about it because of course, it's hard. Like, for example, I'm heterosexual, so I have to be very sensitive when it comes to, LGBTIQ, issues. Or I'm not disabled, right? So I have to be very sensitive, about these issues. So I think we always have to engage. But I'm willing to listen when it comes to those issues, and I'm willing to listen to change my vocabulary if I should ever be, discriminating, which I hopefully I'm not. But, I might be. So I expect this from other people when it comes to racism as well. So, but sometimes, you're just exhausted or you have other things on your mind. And then I feel like, I might just tell them, watch this, whatever, read this book or, ask someone else, because it's not my, I can't always do it. But I think it's a day-to-day decision. Right? But I think it's especially important to raise these issues at work, and I think this is something where you can still feel the results of structural institutional racism because we are underrepresented, in journalism, people of color and Black people. Like it's 1 million Black people in Germany, but we have this term migration background. So everyone who has either been born in a foreign country or one of hers or her parents have been are called, a person with migration background. And these are like 22 million in Germany. So it's a quarter of the population. It's big, right? And a lot of them are POCs or Black people. So, but if you look at the media, for example, it's only 5% of the journalists who are journalists of color or Black. So we are definitely underrepresented in a lot of, like professions. And I think especially when it comes to broadcasting in the media, it's really crucial because, you have to represent the society, right? And we are a diverse society. And if it's only a room of white males reporting, it's a different reporting than when it's, it's a very diverse editorial department. So this is something, I feel like there are very few Black people where I work.
Good evening, and thank you for the well-made documentary. My question was, or is, were they ever successful in getting the street name changed?
Yes.
Okay, congratulations.
Nice, right?
Right.
Yes, I wanted to say that. They renamed it after Wilhelm Amo, who was the first African philosopher in Germany in the 18th century. He was enslaved as a child, I think from Ghana. And he was brought, kidnapped and brought by the Dutch to Germany and given to a German duke or something. And then he went on to university and he got his PhD and he became the first African philosopher in Germany. Yeah. So it was hard work. I have to pass it on to the people who, managed to put so much pressure on the city to change the name. Yeah, but it's a big issue, renaming street names in Germany right now. They're doing it in some countries and with some streets now. Yeah.
Okay. Another question. Okay, go ahead.
So I'm wondering what the relationship is between Afro-German groups and Turkish German groups, right? Do you see yourself fighting for the same thing? Is there like a solidarity? And also, how is the experience different? Being I mean, you talk about like migration background, right? That's a huge, that's like massive, right?
Can be
So
people
how
from
does-
Finland, you know, having a
Exactly,
mic-
yeah,
you know,
or
so, yeah,
Poland,
yeah,
right?
Yeah,
Like, so
yeah. That's a very good question and a difficult one because, you know, it starts with like which language do we use? Because I would say, and a friend of mine from Germany is here as well, and she knows a lot about it. She's German Turkish, and a lot of German Turkish people wouldn't call themselves people of color. They wouldn't really. So it's already, you don't really have a name to kind of name the group, you know, who suffer from racism. You know what I mean? Like I would say it's black people and people of color, but they don't really feel this is kind of like their niche. So, and they're the biggest minority in Germany. So I would say there is, of course, partially their solidarity, and especially we had a number of racist terrorist attacks in the last couple of years. Like, I don't know, there was one, you might have heard about it here, from a neo-Nazi terror group called NSU, and they killed 9 people, POCs and 1 policewoman between 2000 and 2006. And for all this time, the police didn't think neo-Nazis were behind it, but the communities, they were like Turkish community, Greek community and stuff, like they kind of knew it was a racist attack, right? But the police and the Secret Service and also the media gave it a very racist name, the whole, you know, I don't want to repeat the name, but it was really racist and derogatory, how they called the whole murder attacks. And they said they were killed because they were involved in organized crime, right? And then in 2011, this neo-Nazi terrorist group were just underground, and they had like bomb attacks, and they robbed banks. And in 2011, a bank robbery went wrong, and then, you know, it kind of all came out. Like 2 of them were killed and all came out, it was a big issue. And then all of a sudden, it was obvious that it was a neo-Nazi group behind it, right? So I think, you know, when all that came out, there was solidarity definitely in the communities who who suffer from racism, and there were demonstrations and stuff like that. But you know, I mean, it's really difficult, right? Because you also see racism from German Turkish against black people. Because you know how it is. It's like if you look at South Africa, for example, you have white people, colored people, black people. Colored people and black people, I would say we're all black, right? But you know, they were put in different areas, you know, segregation and stuff. So there was like discrimination from colored people against black people as well, because they felt, you know, we're kind of like above you. We, you know, like a little bit closer to the top, to the white people, but you know. So sometimes when you look at the German, Turkish and the black relationship, it's also difficult because some German, Turkish people are kind of light-skinned, but then also they experience a lot of racism because they're biggest minority and then might be Muslim. So it's just really, really, really complicated, if you understand what I'm trying to say here. But I guess it's maybe similar here with the black and the Latin American community, I don't know. Right? Mm. Yes. I mean, you are the moderator. I don't want to take
ahead,
over.
yeah, sure.
I'm like, okay, there's a question. Sorry.
And then there was the lady to the left. Okay.
Just a question about the Turkish community. I was told that they helped to rebuild Germany after World War
Yes.
II. But many of them cannot get German citizenship, even though their families have been there since World War II. Is that true? And
Yeah, I mean, you have to apply for it, and it's not that easy to get the German citizenship. Yeah.
Okay.
And yeah, there were like, it was called, there was a term for it, like guest worker. They were brought to Germany, you know, in the 50s, 60s, 70s to kind of build to work in the factories and yeah, rebuild Germany. Yeah, and yeah.
And there was a movie I saw called Motopo about African immigrant who had been living in Germany for a long time, and he had difficulty getting working papers because he's, you know, black. And it showed all of the different difficulties that immigrants have in Germany trying to get work because, quote unquote, they're not German citizens.
Yeah.
Is that still going on? Or?
You know, for a long time, when you were born, and I think it's different in the States, when you were born in Germany, you were not automatically a German citizen, right? They changed that in 2000, and now it's, you know, when you're born in Germany, like, for example, your parents came from Turkey in the 1970s, then they have a child, and it's born after 2000, it was like you could automatically become a German citizen. But it wasn't like that before. So you still had to apply, and yeah, there are a lot of like things you have to fulfill to become a German citizen. Yeah.
Hi, thank you for the lovely movie.
Thank you.
I'm asking this because I'm a big James Baldwin fan. And I
Oh.
didn't know you wrote the foreword for the German version, so I was just wondering what it was to write that or to participate in a project like that.
Oh, I was really humbled and very grateful, and I love James Baldwin. I think he's just brilliant. He's really, really brilliant, and I think there are a lot of things. And you know, I mentioned it in the documentary, and I said in the beginning that we have been really influenced by what is going on here in the U.S. with the African American struggle and Germany, because of course it's a different situation. Because here, I would say, of course, you know, the Black community in the States is diverse too, but you know, a lot of Black people share the history of enslavement, right? Like over generations. So you kind of have like cultural practices, languages, you know, you feel more like a community. In Germany, Black people, it's really, really diverse because Black people have been in Germany for 400 years, but you know, some came from different African countries, some are mixed race, some are just here to study, you know, like they come from all kind of different countries. So it's just, we live, you know, like a lot of us, especially now, I'm born in 81, but you know, grew up kind of like being one of the only ones, you know, so you don't have like a lot of Black people around you. So, you know, it's just a different experience. So it's a little bit harder to kind of form a community, but I still feel that James Baldwin with his analysis, you know, it's really something you can also use to analyze the situation in Germany, right? So like just the refusal of white people to, you know, acknowledge that there is racism, right? For example, if you look at the institutional side, in Germany we have the same problems you have here in the US, that students of color get worse grades for the same performance than white students, right? Every study shows that. If you have a Turkish-sounding name and if you apply for a job, with the same qualifications a white person has, you get less likely invited for a job interview, right? I mean, these are all the things we all know, and you know, it's similar here. So, I mean, you can see similarities when it comes to, you know, the structural issue of racism, definitely. But I'm like, oh my God, James Baldwin. So yeah, I was happy.
The film is called Afro.Germany.
Yeah.
So being Black and German, so there is no hyphen. It's not Afro-German, you know, living in this country for quite some time, you know, we are very used to the hyphen, African-American, Asian-American, etc. So what made you, you know,
Put
choose,
the dot?
choose not to go the route with the hyphen, but the dot?
I think the dot is more like to include not only Afro-Germans, but just Black people in Germany, right? Like Issa Bar, for example, the refugee from Burkina Faso, he doesn't have a German passport. So Afro-German is often, you know, used for people like me, you know, who have a German passport and whatever, been born here or raised here. So that's why I wanted to be very inclusive. And for example, if you look at the Initiative of Black People in Germany, it's called Initiative of Black People in Germany, not Initiative of Black Germans, right? So it's more inclusive. Yeah.
I would like to follow up on what you said about, or what was raised, the African-American experience versus the experience of Black people living in Germany. So what would you say, in what way would you say there are similarities? I mean, like the visibility issue, of course. But in what way would you say there are differences? And could you elaborate on that a bit?
Yeah, I think, like I said, the main issue is like the question of community and of shared experiences. Because I guess it's a bit easier maybe to organize here because you have like this community feeling. And for example, in Germany, we don't have neighborhoods, let's say like Harlem, where there are a lot of Black people. Like, of course, you know, there are Black people everywhere, but it's not because it's just like around 1 million. And we have neighborhoods where there are a lot of people of color, but I couldn't say, oh, you know, I know in these streets there are just mainly Black people. So it's more like they're scattered all around. So that is, I guess, different. But you know, like, you know why Black Lives Matter was so big in Germany as well? Because we face the same issues, right? Of police brutality, for example. It's not, I don't know, I don't like the term, but I hear you say the police is really trigger happy, right? They shoot easily in Germany, in the US, right? Is it, that's how you phrase it, right? Trigger happy. And in Germany, it's different because the police doesn't use guns. Like, we don't have as many guns as you here. You know, nobody owns a gun in Germany. I know, it's totally different, right? And also the police doesn't use the guns as easily. But still, we have issues of police brutality, and between 1990, German unification, and 2020, 159 people of color were killed in police custody. And these things have not really been solved yet. And just now on the news, there's a case in Mannheim where a person has been killed by the police. Like, he was mentally ill, and he was just, like, the police used force, and he's dead now. And it's not sure, like, if you read it on the news, it's not sure exactly what happened, but there's a video showing that they used force. And I think it's not sure if it was a person of color, but it seems like it was a person of color. So, so these are issues we face as well, right? Yeah, I think just because it's not as bad as it is here, we still struggle with this. And often, you know, and I mean, you know what I'm talking about. If a police person killed someone, they very seldom get punished for it, like put on trial or be, you know, sent to jail and stuff like that. So that is definitely similar in Germany.
Yeah, the gentleman over there.
Thank you so much for all that you've said, and I think this is a very new perspective that I particularly am getting. I was in Germany in Berlin actually a couple of years ago for the Biennale, and one of the things that that surprised me, actually at the time there was a controversy about the naming. One of the things that surprised me was that there was very good acceptance of the fact that Germany's colonial past was very brutal, particularly with the Herero. But what surprised me was how skewed that history was. And so that surprised me. My question is regarding something that is going on not just in Germany, but across Europe, and it starts from the United States, and this is critical race theory. Now, this is the first philosophical movement that is coming out of America, going to the old continent. Typically, it used to be philosophical movements come from Europe to America. And in France, there is a lot of pushback on critical race theory, and they think
On what,
that
sorry?
critical race theory. You've been talking about race as a structural problem in Germany. And I wanted to find out from you if you've heard about how the Germans are looking at this issue of critical race theory coming to the old continent, whereby people are starting to look at race as not just incidents, but a structural problem. And they can either they don't want to deal with it, or they're accepting of it. In France, they're having trouble with it.
You know what? First of all, it's interesting because in Germany, we don't use the term race because of our National Socialist history, right? It's written in the Constitution, but they want to change it. Like maybe, you know, like you can't be discriminated, you know, because of your race, whatever, it's written in there now. And there's a discussion if they should replace it by, for example, you can't be discriminated, or you can't be racially discriminated or something, right? So we don't use the term. I know, because we all know there are no such thing as human races, right? It's a social construct. But I know you use it here to deconstruct the construct of race. So it's different. You know what? In Germany, I don't think there are a lot of people who know about critical race theory. Like, there's no discourse on that. People don't know about it. Full stop. So that's what I said earlier with like, what does our curriculum look like in the universities, in the schools? There's, you know, of course there are people doing research on racism, but it's kind of like a niche, right? We don't have not one department in a university doing research on racism, like a whole department, not one. We have people doing research on racism, we have institutes doing research on racism, but we don't have one department. So, you know, people are still fighting for that. So, but I know that in France and Great Britain, they're really, they're pushing. And when it comes to colonial history, you know, we have this whole debate on restitution. You say restitution, like giving back the artifacts they stole, right? So that is an issue, and also giving back the skeletons. And I mean skeletons they took from the colonial countries back then. Yeah, like skulls. They took skulls from, like, you know, the Germans from Namibia and Tanzania and whatever, took them to Germany, put them somewhere in a museum, and they never gave them back. So I know that the countries, the African countries, are really pushing and really trying to get them back from the German government. And also Namibia is really pushing for Wiedergutmachung.
Wiedergutmachung.
Reparation. Sorry,
Reparations.
yes. Oh, you speak German. All of you, so I can talk in German. So they're really pushing on it and kind of negotiating it. So yeah, I don't know if that helps. But I think that's the last thing I'm saying about that. Not everyone in Germany feels that colonialism was a bad thing. You know what I mean? And it's similar in the US and in France. They know it was a bit brutal. But, you know, we gave them culture and, you know, like helped them being civilized. And this is kind of still, you know, the way it is discussed. I'm not saying that everyone discussed it, but, you know, it's not seen. I mean, it was a crime, right? It was a human rights crime. But it's not necessarily seen as that. So, yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah.
We would want to do justice to those who contributed over Zoom. So
Oh, I'm
Professor
talking
Brown
too long.
has a
I'm
few.
sorry.
No, it's not your fault. It is. If there is a
Sorry.
fault, that's mine.
Yes, a couple of questions for you. One was, what was your inspiration to become a journalist? And to talk more specifically about how your Hunter education helped to inspire
Is that
you.
your
I
question,
did not write that
Professor
question.
Brown? I became a journalist because of Professor Brown. No. Okay. These are there more questions, or should I answer these two first? Are there more questions, or should I answer these two first? Okay. But you know, I always kind of like to ask critical questions, like I did in the seminar with Professor Brown, and I could never keep my mouth shut, like right now. And I was just really concerned about justice, really, as well, right? You know, and I always wondered when I grew up, like, why were there no black people on TV reading the news? Like, where are they? We all know they could do it. So I kind of felt, you know, it's good to change that. And I just never I always felt, I mean, you know what? It has so much to do also with privilege, though. Because, I mean, I'm a black woman, yes, but I also come from a middle-class family and from, like, kind of an academic background. And it is obviously something which makes me privileged. So I, you know, had the chance, you know, going to university. I mean, university is free in Germany, which is really good. But I had to go, you know, the chance to study and just, you know, go abroad and stuff like that. So that definitely helped. But at one point, I was thinking of going to the UN, actually. Yeah, because when I did the internship here at the peacekeeping, I thought it was interesting as well. But yeah, I just like to ask questions and try to seek answers. And Hunter education, yeah, like I said earlier on, it was just really helped me, you know, to find out more about the issues that are really difficult to get knowledge about in Germany. And I mean, in the documentary, we're talking about silencing, right? So I think it really helped me to, you know, yeah, learn more.
Just one thing, we have already passed our 7 o'clock, you know, deadline. If we don't want to take it too strictly, we could go on maybe for another 5 minutes or so, but then should come to an end, and we then could kind of advance or kind of continue our conversation upstairs in the Freedom Room for for booth for the reception. Yeah. But Professor Brown, if you have some more questions from the Zoom participants, please go ahead.
Yes, one person asked the question, your adoptive parents, what kinds of reactions did they have to confront adopting you in the German context?
That is a very personal question. But let me say this. It wasn't that easy, like, especially for my mom, who is from Sweden, and she's like blonde, and I don't know, you saw her in the movie. She was called names like, oh, you're the baby with a, N-word and stuff like that in the 80s. So that was hard, but there were also, they're my parents, and they were really like, I think they taught me to keep my head up high, right? And just never try to limit yourself. Like, it's really hard, I think, to still be able, especially, for example, with journalism, to dream and do the things you want to do if you're, always, you projected these racist stereotypes. Like, you should dance, you should whatever. I can't dance, I can't sing. So that was out of the question. I was like, okay, what else can I do? Because when I was younger, people were like, oh, so you want to, become a journalist, so go to the music channels. I was like, no, I don't want to say the next video is from Madonna. I want to talk to the chancellor, so, to a politician, do an interview there. So it kind of, it's difficult to imagine yourself doing something which is not as presented. But I don't want to act like I did something great. I mean, there were other black journalists, right? I'm not saying I'm the only one. There are other black journalists and also, on TV, people of color. But it's just very few. And, from like, there were black males, but later on, like in the end of the 90s and 2000s, but no black woman. So I'm not saying I'm like the only one.
Maybe as the last question, you are the news anchor of the main news program Heute on public television on ZDF. And does that job leave you time to pursue other interests? Because you do have other interests, as we can see. Filmmaking, for example, making other documentaries. Is there something in the pipeline for you?
Well, I'm trying to do a documentary on refugees, and also, has something to do with racism too. But, I'm still trying to kind of get the TV station to give me the money to do it. Yes, but it is something I would like to do as well. Yeah.
Okay, thank you very, very much.
Thank you.